Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Objective. And today we're going to be talking about a man who has made a lot of noise over the internet over the past year or so, and he is no stranger to controversy. You might look him up, end up going down a rabbit hole of his videos, video clips, and get a little bit addicted to it. You might. That's what I did. That's what a lot of people have. And he's very popular right now. When he goes live on YouTube, I've seen him with 20, 30, 50,000 live viewers or something like that. Instagram, 10, 15,000 live viewers. It's a lot of people watching you live on the internet. And it also normally means nonstop super chat, new member, new paid member, super chat. That's a really cool gig. But he definitely has a brand. He is a former image consultant, the way he says it. He's an image consultant, which you may say, oh, that's such a superficial thing, image consultant or something. But I mean, is it? When you meet somebody, how do you behave? When you go on a first date, how do you behave? Do you air out your dirty laundry right then and there, or do you put your best foot forward? So I think the image and branding industry is perfectly legitimate and respectable. This is a solo episode today, so I could definitely use your input in the chat room, and especially the super chat. We've got Sammy's board again with 99 pence, Marilyn with $2, Jonathan Hodig with 19.99, and Robert with $2 saying, hey, everybody. So please also become an Ayn Rand Central UK member. We are running a promotion this week to do Nikos's Jocko Willing book study club if enough people join. So please consider joining us to help this thing grow. All right, let's talk about Kevin Samuels. He looks like Malcolm X. He wears the glasses. He's got the suit. He's very poised, very respectful in his dialect. I think that's sort of his brand. He's kind of like the new Malcolm X in a certain respect, telling largely the Black community what he thinks is best for them. So he's largely addressing Blacks. He himself is a Black man, and that is largely what he's doing. One of the main differences I noticed from Malcolm X is that Malcolm X, back in the 60s or so, him and the Nation of Islam and a lot of Black liberationists or even just civil rights leaders were largely anti-capitalist, were largely, they wanted to dismantle the United States or certainly to change the economic system. They saw capitalism as the enemy. That is not Kevin Samuels' message. He is telling people, get your own piece of the pie, as problematic as that metaphor may be in your opinion and mine. He's saying, get out there and pursue a career. He's telling young Black men, and everything he's saying, I think, if it's true, can be extracted and applied to any race of people. But he's largely speaking to what he considers his own community. He's telling Black men, clean up, wear a suit, dress nice, and join the same workforce as everybody else. And don't give me this whole, hey, man, this is the white man's country and the odds are stacked against us. Even if that's true, what good does it do to complain about it? Get out there and dress the part. He says, don't have dreadlocks because that is not a winning image. He says, don't tell me that this is a Eurocentrist, image that has been forced upon us. The way Kevin Samuels retorts to that position is, he says, if the money in your pocket has the picture of dead white presidents on it, then act like an American and dress the part, dress the way that is like that successful people tend to dress and look. Clean shaven, short hair, and helps if you have a wife and kids. That's another statistic that he cites. So Kevin Samuels loves statistics. And when he's faced with disagreement, he often points to statistics that he has seen. One of the statistics that he invokes, which is definitely separates him from a lot of other kind of conservative-ish Blacks. That is, when it comes to a lot of sort of Black leaders, Black public figures that are saying enough with the victim mentality, oftentimes those same Blacks are also saying we have a crime problem in the Black community that needs to be addressed. But Kevin Samuels seems to hold a belief, statistics that he cites that say that like crime among Blacks is largely overstated. He says there's a very, very, very high percentage of black men that have never been to jail, that are in the middle or upper middle class, and there's no black women for them to marry. That is what he is basically saying. And he points at black women. He points at them. He says, you effed up. This is his message to black women. He says, feminism has done you wrong. He said, we had a good thing going for us, we meaning blacks. We had a tight family unit. We had tight communities. Things were going well. And then came this message that says, girls, you don't need no man. Do whatever you want. Get out there and live the life that you want. You don't need a man. These men are abusive. And Kevin seems especially hostile to a show called The Color Purple, which I've never seen. But what I've picked up is that maybe it's sort of, it's maybe like kind of like the Mad Men of the black community, where it kind of, it shows women in an unhappy state because of the way their husbands are treating them, and the husbands are, promiscuous and unfaithful. So Kevin Samuels definitely challenges this notion that life was unpleasant for women before the 60s and 70s, kind of, before the feminists showed up. He says life was better. Women had security. Men were happier. Women were happier. Life was better. And definitely when it comes to financial security, everybody was better off. But certainly if women want a partner, he says the way that they have chosen to go has not done them any favors. Now, again, he's largely speaking to the black community and speaking to black women, but I think you can apply a lot of what he's saying to women of any community, women of any part of town, women from anywhere that have been affected by feminism. What exactly we mean by feminism is another question that maybe we'll be able to get into. But again, Kevin Samuels, he looks and kind of dresses like Malcolm X. He speaks sternly with no nonsense, but he is not saying dismantle the system and rise up and by any means necessary. He is saying get out there and get what you want. To women as well, to men, focus on career, make as much money as you can, he's telling men. To women, he's saying get feminine, stay in shape, be pleasant, he's saying. So he takes a lot of calls. That's kind of the format that he's known for. He takes a lot of video calls over Instagram and over YouTube. He puts out a Zoom link and he takes calls over Instagram Live. And he speaks a lot to women and mostly black women. So they disagree with him often. So here's how Kevin speaks to people. He asks, what do you want? What do you want? She says, I want a man who makes this much money. Like, all right. She says, I want a man. He goes, do you care if he's black or not? And she says, yes, I want him to be black. He says, okay, what do you want? What do you hope he makes? She says, I want him to make the same amount of money that I make. And she makes, 6 figures. Kevin answers, that's not going to happen because this percentage of black men or just men in general make 6 figures. And statistics show that they are not choosing women who are your age, have as many kids as you have, and behave like you. They are going with younger, more feminine, and without child women. People get angry at him, but again, I'm just looking at the statistics. This is what men, high value men, are choosing. What does he mean by high value men? He means men who make 6 figures or higher, who have a network of people with a similar income, a network of people who consider him to be part of their network and who consider him useful. He uses this word useful, which is really interesting to me. He tells people, don't be selfish, right? Obviously on this channel that the word selfish is often, we know it often comes as kind of a package deal. Selfish, it packages rational selfishness with the irrational short-sightedness. But Kevin Samuels, he tells people, don't be selfish. He says you need to be useful to people, which I think what he really means to say is you want people around you to see the value in you. Because that'll help you get where you want to be. So again, he sees high value men as making a lot of money, but not only making a lot of money, having a network of people who make similar amount and who consider him useful. So kind of being part of that high society. So entertainers and athletes are not part of that. They can be, but first of all, it's a very small amount of people that are in entertainment or athletics and successful at it. And also, it's just kind of a very different type of thing. You generally your career tends to climax when you're young, certainly if you're an athlete, and often if you're an entertainer as well. And that's the opposite of if you're in finance, if you're a lawyer, if you're a doctor, if you're in one of those high paying fields. Normally in those fields, you are paying your dues in your 20s and 30s. And then if you play your cards right, you're making great money in your 40s and 50s. And so the question is then, if you're single at that time, what are you interested in? And Kevin Samuels, against citing statistics, he says men who are in their 40s and 50s, who make a lot of money, are in that network of people who make similar amounts of money. Those men tend to prefer younger women, attractive women, feminine, agreeable, pleasant women, and women who are planning to have his kids. A man in that position is often looking to have what Kevin calls a legacy, planning to have kids and kind of pass his success on to them. And with this in mind, a man in that position statistically is often not interested in a woman who is very career driven. So when Kevin Samuels is talking to these women, often who are very successful, he's asking them, okay, so what do you want? And these women are single, maybe they've got a kid or more than one, and they say, I want a man who makes the same amount of money as me. He says, that's not going to happen. He says, why would those men want you? She says, well, because I'm very educated and I make a lot of money. He says, why does a man care how educated you are? And why does he care that you have a lot of money? He won't be able to spend that money. So again, Kevin Samuels, he's very harsh, controversial. A lot of people disagree with what he says, but that is the message that I hear him sending. He says, a man does not generally care how much money a woman makes. Certainly the man that a successful woman wants, if she wants a man who is equally successful, he is not checking to see which woman makes as much money as me. He's looking for which woman it has the qualities I'm looking for. Again, agreeable, feminine, friendly. Kevin Samuels used the word submissive, which I know can be very hard for a lot of people to get on board with. But he's basically saying men who have options are not choosing ball busters. So it's very controversial, obviously, in today's world, and it gives us especially a lot to think about. Kind of like, how do we completely disagree with what he's saying? Do we agree partially with what he's saying? What can we abstract from what he's saying? I think, let's say Kevin Samuels is here at the Ayn Rand Center UK, and I'm telling him shared values is what brings people together and keeps them together. Shared values. Let's say they share philosophical beliefs, or they have certain kind of fundamental sort of sense of life values, like same approach to the universe, and they just get along really well, and they have shared values, shared beliefs. Kevin would answer, okay, great. But all things being equal, high value men tend to choose such and such. Again, younger women with no kids who behave a certain way that is pleasant. So all things being equal. So let's say what Kevin calls a high value man is looking at several prospects. He's ruling out women that don't meet that criteria. So yes, maybe shared values are a non-negotiable for him, but that being equal, he is going with what he's going with. When Kevin is talking to these women who call in on his show, and they make a lot of money and they have a PhD, he asks them again, like, okay, so what do you want? They say, I want a man who makes as much money as me. And when he kind of gives them the statistics that demonstrate why they're very unlikely to find a man who makes as much as she does, then she'll say, okay, you know what? I can marry a man who makes less than me, but I'll hone in on his skills. Like, I'll see the potential and I'll help him make more money. And Kevin answers, that's what you say now, but are you going to be okay being married to a man who makes a third of what you make? And when you go out to nice dinners, you're paying for 2/3 of it. When you go on vacation, you're paying for 2/3 of it. And then you're trying to kind of get him to improve, hone in on his skills and to become more successful. You're trying to push him to do that. It's Sunday morning and you're telling your husband, hey, let's get out of bed and let me start showing you, let me start training you. Let's start working on this. And he's really cool just laying in bed on Sunday morning. Are you sure this is going to work? He asks these women, and he gets He gets definitely a lot of disagreement, a lot of anger, but also he gets a lot of thanks. Over in the super chat, Jonathan Honig with 19.99. Thank you. Oh, actually, I already read that one. Sammy's board again with 99 pence. Marilyn with $2 says, I'm guessing he's not popular with black women. Well, he's certainly a villain in the eyes of many people, black or otherwise, but he has a large fan base now. And like I said, he has very high engagement with his audience, and a lot of them are sending him money or joining his paid membership program, and a lot of them are black. I mean, they're according to their profile picture and how they express themselves, how they identify as. A lot of them are black. So he is definitely making noise among blacks. You definitely see a lot of people on the internet who consider themselves black who are saying they have been changed. They are thanking him. Again, they're sending him super chats nonstop. I mean, who do people send super chats and join their paid membership program for? People who they are grateful for. People say, hey, what your message has changed my life. So he is definitely seen positively by a lot of people in the so-called black community. So again, Kevin Samuels, he sees high value men as men who make a lot of money, have a network of similar income people, that those people consider him useful. That is a high value man. For women, feminine, beautiful, friendly, and pleasant. So, he describes it as, the first lady, kind of like women who are ready to play that role of the first lady. I mean, what does that mean? The first lady, like, what does that invoke? That does not sound like the feminist ideal, a woman who's just as successful as a man can be, who's just as strong. Obviously, a first lady, by definition, she's kind of like there to support the president. And similarly, Kevin Samuels, he's telling women what a successful man wants is a woman there to support him, to stand by his side through this life, and to play a very different role than a man plays. So it's very interesting to me. I know here in the sort of objective sphere, largely very few of us, I think, would call ourselves feminists, but we're inspired by Dagny Taggart and just Kira in We the Living, just this idea that an individual is an individual, end of story. But all that being said, if you've got options, if you're in high demand as a man or as a woman, what are you choosing is the question. You might say it's 100% shared values. Okay, I'd like to see that. I'd like to see you with multiple prospects, all of which who share your values. Let's say you're a woman. One of them makes 7 figures. One of them is, makes 50 grand a year. I'd be curious to see if money makes no difference at all. Similarly, if you're a man in your 40s and you're making 7 figures or even just 6 figures, you're making a great living. Again, you've got a network of people in a similar bracket. I'm curious who you're choosing. Are you going with a woman the same age as you if you're still single? Are you going with a woman the same age of you who maybe has a kid? Are you going with a girl in her 20s? I'd be interested to see. So it's easy to sit here and say, shared values is all that matters. But I think Kevin Samuels would answer, well, shared values being equal, what are men statistically choosing? So it leaves with a lot of food for thought, doesn't it? I think it does. One of the interesting discussions I saw Kevin Samuels have was with a black young lady in her late 20s, attractive, and a working news reporter or a weather girl. I think a news reporter at her local TV station. So she very much pursued that career. She plans to continue pursuing it. And kind of on the face of it, you would think, yeah, that's a great route for a woman that wants to land a so-called high value man, right? Because, she's obviously beautiful and also brings some of her own money to the household. And also she's got her own kind of network. She's got a little bit of a kind of social capital. But Kevin was telling her, like, in this discussion, he was telling her, these men that you're hoping marry you, they're choosing between you in your late 20s with a career versus women a little bit younger who are, he said, I could put you in a room with some of these women and you might be taken aback by how perfect their etiquette is, how good they are at kind of playing the role of first lady. And again, I know sitting on the sidelines, we might say, no man wants like just a complete trophy wife. But is that entirely the thing that these statistics show men are choosing? Is it just a kind of airhead trophy wife, Or is it a certain type of personality? Is it a certain type of just kind of like supportive person? Now, another thing that Kevin points to, he says these high value men in their 40s and older who make very good money and are still single or even divorced, they generally want to have kids, and they want a wife who's going to raise the kids. He didn't make all this money, says Kevin, so that he could have a nanny or a maid raise his kids. So that's another thing again. So, the modern world encouraged women, pursue a career just the same as any man. And Kevin is answering that women are largely better off not going that route. They're largely better off sort of branding themselves as a wife. So again, very traditionalist. He uses the language, a lot of language that kind of either sounds like evolutionary, like this very kind of like automaton type language, which obviously makes me cringe, might make some of you cringe. But we can, I think, translate a lot of what he's saying to sort of rational speak. So he, like many people, he puts aside the role of chosen values and just treats us like we're, basically cavemen in the city, which I disagree with. But he's very materialistic. So he focuses largely on money and this sort of social class type thing. But if I were to tell him that, I have a feeling he would answer me. He would say, look, do whatever you want. He would say, women and men, you want to not be materialistic? Good luck. But I'm speaking to people who want either women who want a high earning, high value man, or men who want a very beautiful woman. So, I've repeated multiple times, who are these high value men choosing is the question. And on the flip side, who are very exceptionally beautiful women largely marrying? I think, statistics show, even though shared values are very important, that being equal, very beautiful women tend to end up with a high earning man who also has a network of similar people. Again, these are statistics. Kevin definitely is into these statistics. He cites them. He points to them. So it would be interesting to see what the world would look like with a better philosophy. Would all of this be different? Well, first of all, a few things are different. First of all, capitalism would raise everybody's standard of living so high that I don't think people would stress about money in a truly capitalist society the way they do today. So if women do end up single, they're not worried about finding a provider. That's one thing that's different. Or vice versa. A man isn't that as stressed about money, I suppose, because his dollar has a much higher purchasing power. So that's one thing that would be different. Everyone's standard of living would be much higher under capitalism. And obviously, more fundamentally, also technology in capitalism would make us all look younger for longer if we want to, maybe extend our life indefinitely. I mean, so many things would be different. Maybe every woman could look exactly how she wants once, the cosmetics industry brings that about. So there's just a lot of things we can't really control for in this hypothetical. But I'm mostly asking, what would the world look like in an largely objectivist influenced society? What would draw people together? And would there be marriage? And if so, who would marry whom? What would be a lot of the factors that people consider? These are interesting questions. Would it be basically the same statistically? Like, would the more successful men generally end up with younger, very attractive and agreeable, sort of pleasant women? And would very exceptionally attractive women largely end up with high earning men, with a network of high earning men in his life? Maybe yes, maybe a lot. Maybe it would be completely different and difficult to contemplate right now. So I think one thing, I don't know if I would say I disagree with him with his materialistic approach to things. Because I think if I were to tell Kevin Samuels he's very materialistic and he makes no room for consciousness and philosophy, I think he would answer me and say, no, those things being equal, here's what people are choosing statistically. So that would be one point. I definitely disagree with his emphasis on race, like the racial community, although he is sending a message of individualism, I think, implicitly. He's saying, you as an individual, ask, what do I want and how do I get it? That, to me, is the greatest message I could ask for in today's world. But I kind of wish he would just kind of move past the whole racial component, and I kind of wish everybody would. So Kevin he I don't remember what I was going to say. Yeah, his emphasis on race, on the racial, on kind of the community. He talks about. He says, we had, he talks about like he dislikes rap music, like what it became with all the vulgarity and all the materialism. The girls shaking their booty and all of that. He much more prefers, the intellectual rap, like Public Enemy. He says, yeah, we had Public Enemy, we had all this intelligent stuff, and we meaning blacks, went with the ignorant stuff. I would, if I could speak to him, I would say, you don't think the socialism and the anti-capitalism in that good rap, so to speak, you don't think that contributed to the problem? You don't think all that bullshit made the world a worse place for blacks and everybody else? So it would be interesting to have a philosophical discussion with him if he's interested in that. Maybe he's just shut off from it and just not interested. He wants to skip past it. I once heard him mention Atlas Shrugged when he was debating a feminist, or maybe it was a porn star / feminist. I don't remember who he was talking to, but he was talking to a lady, and he speaks a lot of language of we versus you. Like men do this, we do all the difficult jobs, we do that. You women, you just complain and stomp your foot. That's kind of the message he sends women. And he once said, like, he once told this woman, like, if men wouldn't show up, like, it would all fall apart. He says, if Atlas shrugs, it all falls apart. So he used the Atlas shrugs imagery. So I'd be curious. I suspect he's read Ayn Rand, as have many, 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 many people. Ayn Rand is one of the top selling authors of all time. Many people, especially successful and image consultant and entrepreneur, someone like Kevin Samuels, I would imagine has read Ayn Rand, but like so many people, he's not interested in getting down to the bottom of, what is consciousness, or how does consciousness relate to existence? Like, what is the proper code of ethics, and what is is there a collective, is there any duty that you have to your group, so to speak? Because Kevin Samuels, like so many people, he basically says, don't be selfish. You want to be seen as useful to others. It's ultimately all for a selfish cause, I think, but he won't admit that. He acts like, no, evolution wants us to be altruistic or wants us to be useful to others. This especially been interesting for me recently. I've been binge watching the show Mad Men, because of the show that Mark is doing on Fridays, TV Talk. And Mad Men definitely shows the experience of women in the 1960s or the early 60s as very unpleasant. So the main wife in the show, Betty, she is treated like a child. She is definitely, and her husband is unfaithful. So it definitely shows life as sort of worse without feminism, or without women being more independent. Kevin Samuels answers. He says women being independent has given them a life of loneliness. So that's how he answers that. He thinks life is better when women put like their marriage and home first. And when women call in and they tell Kevin Samuels, men cheat on women, he says, well, first of all, women cheat as well. And also he says, this is a part that's very difficult to get on board with. Kevin Samuels, he suggests that men cheating should not necessarily be a deal breaker. There are couples who have an agreement, that have an open marriage or some sort of agreement where, both of them might be having extramarital affairs, and they have an agreement, don't bring any diseases home and don't embarrass me in public. So he's certainly much more modern in that respect. As much as Kevin sounds like a traditionalist, when it comes to this, he's very much telling people, suck it up and don't throw it all away over this. Maybe in order to keep this marriage together and to keep this home whole, it may be the best arrangement for all people involved to allow infidelity. So he's definitely challenging people in that respect in a way it's difficult to get on board with, because isn't there such a thing as commitment? Isn't there such a thing as character? That's definitely something to think about. At the same time, I'm aware I'm not the one who's been married for decades, so I'm not going to really judge that until and unless I've been in that position. All right, let's jump over to the super chats before we call it a wrap. Robert with $10 says, if you're looking for a life partner and how much money he makes is high on your list of priorities, good luck. You'll need it, says Robert. I mean, I think Kevin Samuels would answer. That's not something. I mean, that's easy for you to say, but what he would say, statistics do show that high earning men have more prospects. So it sounds like Robert is completely throwing out that as a consideration at all. I mean, well, high on your list of priorities, like it should be somewhere on your list of priorities, perhaps, but not high. Again, Kevin Samuels, I think, would answer. He says, men who do earn a lot tend to have more, to pick more options to select from. And yeah, we do have the choice to completely throw this away and call it completely superficial. But again, I mean, even just look among objectivists or look amongst people who do have good character. Who do they end up with when they have options? It's worth being open-minded about, I suppose. All right. Robert with $5 says, right, desirable traits in both men and women aren't necessarily disconnected from virtues. In a mixed-up culture, it's a bit of a mixed bag. Not sure exactly which part of my monologue he's referring to, but yes. Marilyn with $5 says, referring to Kevin, he thinks high-value men should be allowed multiple mistresses, from an article by Eartha Hopkins. Well, maybe Miss Hopkins is exaggerating what Kevin says. I think, as many people have. So I think the best way to know Kevin Samuels is to watch Kevin Samuels. A lot of articles have, I think, exaggerated things he said. What he says is, when he speaks to women, I think the message he's sending is infidelity is not necessarily a deal breaker, or he's telling them, ask yourself, should this be a deal breaker necessarily? Maybe the best thing for all parties involved is to keep this marriage and this home together, and to allow a certain degree of an open marriage. Maybe not, but I think his main message to people, which I think we can all get on board with, is he's asking people, what do you want and how to get it? And he's saying, do away with the bad attitude. He's saying this to men as well as to women. He's saying having a bad attitude, feeling entitled, being a brat gets you nowhere. So his message to young men, I find very inspiring. And by the way, he's not just saying chase the dollar. He's saying chase success, and maybe to him, the dollar amount of your net worth is the most important consideration. But yeah, I guess that is what he's saying. But we, let's say you really want to be a teacher. Let's say as a man, that's what you're really inspired to do. Be the best teacher you can and get started on it early, and you'll still be the best teacher you can be. And in all likelihood, also the highest earning teacher you can be. I mean, you definitely don't want to spend your early life being complacent and bitter and expecting the world to hand you something. So he sends that message to men as well as to women. He's telling young women, brand yourself as a potential wife. And it's easy to say, oh yeah, like that's silly, but it might be good advice for a lot of people. Now, as someone who lives in Los Angeles, most girls in their early 20s do not brand themselves as potential wives. Really, nobody of any age in Los Angeles brands themselves that way from what I've seen. But certainly early 20s is party time. And then a lot of these sort of red pill, dating coach type of guys on the internet, they talk about the epiphany moment women have. So they spend their early 20s partying, maybe sleeping with more men than they care to admit. And it doesn't count if they're blackout drunk the way they think of it. And then they have what they call the epiphany stage. Like, oh, wait, I should really be thinking about settling down with somebody. And of course, their options have dried up considerably as time has passed, which kind of brings up the recent episode about Tomi Lahren. She's stomping her foot. But I'd be curious to see, did she brand herself as a serious partner in her early 20s? I'm not asking rhetorically. I truly wonder. But I think Kevin Samuels would be extra harsh on Tomi Lahren, and he would say the fact that Tomi Lahren is so career-driven rules her out in the eyes of many of the men that Tomi wants. Again, we can sit here and judge. We can say a man of self-esteem would want a woman who is equally career-driven. Easy for you and me to say, but I mean, it's not, I don't think it's as easy to judge as that. And also, if you do want to have kids, if you are a man in your 40s or 50s, you've made a great career for yourself. Now you really want to have kids. Maybe you don't want a woman who's going to be out on the road like Tommy Lahren owning the libs around the country. Maybe you want a woman who's more into supporting you and your career and giving your kids the home that they need. So it's easy to, judging is easy, but I don't think judging accurately is easy. Sammy's board again with 99 pence with a picture of a cheeseburger. Thank you, Sammy. Thank you, everybody, for the super chats. This has been quite the monologue. I am ready to take a sip of my tea and call it a wrap for YouTube, that is. Please make sure you're subscribed. Leave a like on this video, and we want to know what you think. Leave us a comment. Also, please consider becoming an Ayn Rand Center UK member. Help this channel sustain and grow. Get access to exclusive equipment such as the Jocko Willink book study that Nikos will revive and resurrect. And good stuff, everybody. Thank you for participating and allowing me to sort of tread into this sort of dangerous water. I mean, there's a lot of buzzwords here that people might get angry at me just for quoting Kevin Samuels or just for showing a little bit of sympathy to what he's saying. They would basically put me in the same bracket as him. I'm just saying, no matter who it is who's talking, there may be some value. There may be something you can abstract from what they're saying. And the fact that Kevin Samuels is so popular, and he's also very popular specifically with Black people, is an interesting development. It's interesting to me. I find it interesting. We're going to jump over to Clubhouse next. I don't think there's anything else coming up. Let me check my notes. Yes, I lied. I lied to you, and I'm sorry. Coming up at 7 p.m. UK time, Art and Cognition, the essay by Ayn Rand, is going to be discussed by James Valiant here on YouTube. Then, coming up at 9 p.m. UK time on Clubhouse, Lee Pearson is going to discuss why did consciousness evolve? The Cutting Edge. Maybe The Cutting Edge is the name of his show. Yes, I think that's the name of his show. The Cutting Edge. Yo, this is The Cutting Edge. Thank you all for joining us today. We're jumping over to Clubhouse right now. Thanks again for the super chats. Please consider becoming a member. Link in the chat room and link in the description. You can't miss it. And quite frankly, you can't afford not to. I am Kevin Stan ULs. We'll be back here for the Daily Objective tomorrow with Mark Pellegrino and myself. See you then. Jump over to Clubhouse now. And goodbye.